No one's sitting there in the office thinking, I can't wait for my 5 cold calls today to sell me something I've already got. You have to make someone trust you and build a rapport with someone in a very little time. So you have to know how to verbalize. You have to know people. You need to understand that you're going to get more no's than yeses, and that's fine, because the no's, if you're good, will lead you to a yes. You will get more from the no's than you will from the yeses. As an actor, I learned more from the auditions that I didn't get than the auditions that I did get. If you want to build a safe environment, you need...
Hello everyone, this is Michael Ocean, see you at SellMeThisPen, and today I have my dear friend Andy Gillies on the call. He's the Director of Business Development at 8x8. Worked with some great companies like TechTarget and RingCentral, but I'm a little bit scared because I have a celebrity in front of me. he's also an actor, and you know I found you on IMDb.
I used to be an actor.
There we go. So there are a lot of stories there. So just tell us a little bit about your journey, acting and sales. Like, how did you actually start and kick it off that way?
Well, I acted. I did all right. I did a few bits and pieces. But as an actor, you've always got times when you're not working. So in them times, I used to do varying other jobs to pay the bills. And then I walked into TechTarget. And I had a mentor there whose name was Tom Walker, and he sort of showed me the picture of how I had a skill set in one area that could potentially be beneficial in another area, and that area being in business will actually make you money. Well, obviously, as an actor, unless you're at the top 5%, it's really hand to mouth all the time. So that was that, really. I came in, I worked with Tom at the time, who's probably, I say this in life, you get people that come to you and they're like signposts. You don't know they're coming, you don't know what they're about, but they just give you a little something that takes you in another direction. So I started to be an SDR, and I think what I found was that because if you do acting, you should have a good level of emotional intelligence, if you're good. And I was able to utilize that when I was on calls with people to make what I was doing more human. And what I noticed, and this was like 15 years ago maybe, and what I noticed around the people around me is all they were doing was talking about business, product. I wasn't. I was talking to people about what's the impact, what matters to you, what's keeping you up at night. And because of that, I was able to drive more meetings and I was able to drive more stuff. Anyway, that happened. Then again, Tom was like, maybe you should manage people. So I started to manage people, and then I did a bit of customer success work for TechTarget, where I'd go in and talk to clients about how to utilize the tool set that they push in front of them to optimize success. Obviously, I used to work with a lot of BDR and SDR teams doing that for varying companies. And then it was someone at one company was like, I think you should just do this for us. And yeah, that was that. And then it went from there. And again, I've been very lucky. I've had some good people along the way that have given me good advice at the right time. And I think that's key.
I love it.
No one's an island. No matter where you are no matter what you're doing in life, you always need a little bit of help from people that know a little bit more. And I've been very lucky in having that. So, there's a little bit of luck there. But then, we all need a little bit of luck in life. And I always say you make your own luck.
That is true. The more you do, the luckier you get. Obviously, yes, sometimes like you don't have control over things, to your point. You meet someone, it's just luck. But if you show up more and more focused on being just human, and then it's your chance to basically make that relationship a long-term, thing rather than just a meeting. Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I always the people interact with stories. I think if you look at the history of humanity, nothing's changed. If you go back to when we were cave people, what did we do? We draw pictures on walls to tell a story, to share. That's in effect what we've done. And now we've got social media to do it. So in effect, we use social media to share stories. So that's what businesses should do. Share stories, have the right conversations with people, share a good story, and, find out what they need and what matters to them.
Look, what you said resonates a lot with my experience too. I used to be a musician, I used to be a singer, and I did this full time for sometimes. And some of the skills that you bring from other, industries can definitely be applied in sales. Like you'd be more, comfortable going on stage and having a quick talk because, you're used to stage. And I wanted to hear, like, from your perspective, what skill sets from acting, got transformed to sales based on your experience.
Reading people. If you can read people, and you're not in a psychological sort of, you know, bad way, but genuinely, if you can read people, if you can understand what they actually need or want from the conversation you're having, that's the very key thing. So it's emotional intelligence. That was the biggest thing for me. And also, it's very easy when, as you just said there, when I was pitching on a phone, it never bothered me because it wasn't worse than getting up in front of 1,000 people and remembering 50 lines of pages, 50
Mm.
pages of lines. So it never bothered me. I think actors actually make good SDRs. In fact, when I was at TechTarget with Tom, we actually set up a team of actors that when they weren't working would come in because they could just pick up a pitch like that. They didn't need any direction. They understood the emotion and the intelligence or the humanity within the pitch. And also, I think there's a common misconception about acting that it's easy, and it's not. It's hard work. As an example, I was always told in my time as an actor that you're never late. If you're on time for a show, you're late, or if you're on time for your call, you're late. So it drove a work ethic within me, and it's instilled into me that you're always competitive and that you've fight. Maybe that's the wrong word, but you've got to fight for everything, because if you don't, there's someone behind you that will.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the things that it instilled personally into me. Now, actually, I've seen a few SDRs that were actors or are actors that if they'd have wanted to make the jump like me, they'd probably be very good at what they do.
I love it. Like to your point, you have pages. It's just not one line pitch that you need to really understand and feel. And when we talk about buyer persona in sales, it's a human being, right? It's just like the character that you can imagine being in their position. So I think to your point, actors have an easier way because you already practice that, how to really mimic that character and kind of like be that character. So if we can teach our sales teams for a second, take a step back instead of like trying to focus on the words when we say a pitch or even the entire conversation with a prospect or client, who they are, what are some of their fears, what they're going through today. I think that makes it easier to even start the conversation. Let's talk about SDR orgs. You've
Yeah.
been running it, you have managers, you've seen it and done it all. It's a tough work. It is
Yes,
a
it is.
tough work. Like you get rejected, and this is just part of the game, and you need to accept it. How do you help your managers help their team to build a safe space for them so they
Okay.
can actually, accept these setbacks and bounce back up?
So I think from a human point, the one word that I always like is consistency. I think if you're consistent in the way you manage people and they always know that you're there to help and support them, whatever the situation is, with that level of consistency, it enables you to have harder conversations. Because let's be honest, when you're a manager, you're going to have a hard conversation at some point. And more importantly, you're probably going to have a bad conversation with someone that you actually genuinely like as a person. And you don't want to have that conversation. So I've always said to anyone that I manage, just be consistent all the time. Be consistent to the good times, be consistent from the bad times. Always have that same level in the way you deal with someone from a human point of view. I think that's really key. That's the safe space, because then they know when you compliment them, it's coming from the same place. And they know that when you're trying to maneuver them into a different space, it's coming from the same place. So for
Mm.
me, that's key. That's key. And that's the way I like to manage everyone that I've ever managed. That they know what I'm about. They know exactly what to expect, but they know 100% that when they need me to fight their corner, that's what's going to happen. So I think you need to build pillars around the team that you're working to give them that safety. I don't think it's a simple thing of giving. I think you do all the work prior rather than sort of retrospectively. So
Yeah,
if you want to
absolutely.
build a safe environment, you need consistency, knowledge. Knowledge is power. If the more knowledge that your team have and they know how to do their job and the pitfalls of why things are not going their way, because Within the SDR world, it's normally one of a few things as to why an SDR is not performing. You can put it down to who are they prospecting, the accounts they're going after, are they doing enough in the market? Then what they do. It's quite obvious to work with them and find out what the problem is. Yeah, and then it's just working with them. It's coaching them. It's putting the right pressure at the right time. Some people you don't need to push as hard because they do the pressure for themselves. They care enough that they put that pressure on them. You've got to be really careful about pressurizing someone that is like that naturally as a person, because ultimately you could lead them to a burnout situation.
To me, it sounds like you need to know your people. You
100%.
need to know your people in an individual level, whether it's a manager. So it goes, way back before you start having these conversations with them when you hire them. You need to have this consistency as a leader to bring people that are aligned with your vision, and then for them, not only focusing on tactical stuff, because to your point, there are certain things you can measure and fix, and there are frameworks around it, but for them to know their people and always be consistent in good and bad days. So it came across more, genuine. It sounded like that, right? Let me go back for a second. I forgot to ask you this question. Like we shared actually with a number of topics with you.
Yeah.
So just like 10 topics relevant to sales, AI. Why did you pick building resilience through coaching? Any specific reason as of why?
Because you need resilience in sales. If you don't have resilience, actually, let me move this back to my previous career. If you don't have resilience as an actor, you ain't making it as an actor. You need to be able to enjoy someone saying no to you. You need to understand it's not personal. You need to understand that you're going to get more no's than yeses, and that's fine, because the no's, if you're good, will lead you to a yes. You will learn more from the no's. You will get more from the no's than you will from the yeses. As an actor, I learned more from the auditions that I didn't get than the auditions that I did get. So I think it's really important. I think it's a key skill set that you need in sales to be resilient, because you're not always going to win the deal.
Look, this is interesting, but I wanted to go back to my SDR days.
Mm.
I did some SDR work in the past, and as soon as you get onboarded, we get access to materials, whether it's your playbook, your methodology, whatever it might be, and most training is around like how to sell rather than understanding of your role. So I wanted to hear from your perspective, what would be a better way to actually, from the get-go, make sure that our reps know what they're getting into, especially if they've never been in sales? Because for SDRs, sometimes we get people from other industries. You said actors, musicians, policemen, and they all have the capability to do this job if we actually guide them and coach them. Would you even communicate this up front, that you're starting with something that is going to be hard?
That depends on the individual, Michael. For me, that's an individual based question. I think some people would respond to that better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think whenever you have to drop the bomb about the reality of a situation in life, I think it's better sometimes with some people to give them that straight away, but other people just give them little pebbles, lead them down the road of what's to come. Just
Mm-hmm.
little bits and little pieces. I think if you should never chuck too much stuff at people. Number one, you need to know how people learn as well, Michael. We all learn in different ways, as we know. Do you learn visually, phonetically, whatever it may be? So you need to understand how someone learns, and then you need to put the right process in front of them to get to where you need to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you put the right things in front of them at the right time, and knowing when to push them at the right time. Yeah. So for me, it's dropping pebbles in as you go along. Because you're right, sometimes in the SDR world, you get, so as an example, I've probably hired quite a few recruiters. Recruiters can make good SDRs.
Absolutely.
And, there is a jump. There is a jump. And as you know, in sales, it's hard, because if there's a number in front of you and if you consistently can't get that number, it's a hard place to be. But then sometimes the easiest answer to that is not everyone's built for sales. And that's fine too, Michael. It's a big world out there. There's a lot of jobs, and there's a lot of ways to go down. It might just not be the world for you, and that's fine.
That is so true. So let me ask you this. To your point, people learn differently. They need different way of coaching. Some people need a straightforward answer. Hey, this is the problem. Go fix it. Some other people need maybe a little bit of like sugarcoating, maybe a little bit more inspiration. When you're managing large teams and getting to know them on an individual level, your managers, help with that for sure. But is there a way just to at least fasten up the process, or you have certain, timeline in your mind as so and so called ramp time, not to know the company, not to know the product, not to know the persona, to really understand your seller persona?
Know what you need, know what's needed to do the job at base level, and that's what you train on first.
Hmm.
If you got to you want an SDR on the phones as quickly as you can, because they sort of need to learn to fail, because that's where you learn how to be good on the phone. So I'm a real fan of driving people to the phones as quickly as possible, because ultimately I do think that that's where relationships are built, and that is what an SDR can then utilize and take on further into their sales team, wherever that goes. And so I think that's really important. I think you need to know what they need to do to get to that initial jump first of all. So what I tend to do is I have a breakdown of all the things, all the tools that they've got, everything that they need to do over the first 4-week period, sort of like a checklist. And that checklist can be removable depending on the experience that's coming in. So then me or the manager and then that individual SDR can work together through that checklist. But the checklist has been devised deliberately to get them to a point quickly.
So to me, it sounds like you want them get on the field as soon as possible so you can learn about them too. It's not only about
Yeah.
just them, doing the job and understanding what they're dealing with, but for you guys to understand, like, who am I dealing with? Because these
Yeah.
are, again, my internal
Yep.
customers or,
Now, you
partners.
sort of need to do that in a controlled environment, Michael. I will say that. You wouldn't want to be sending a junior person out to do with a big enterprise. You wouldn't want
For
that.
sure.
But you can sort of do it in a controlled environment. And there's a lot of tools in the market now that can help, especially with pitching. As you would know yourself, there's a lot of tools in the market that you can use as a manager to help ramp up your team quicker, especially some of the stuff with AI. It's mind blowing actually.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai. So previously, before AI was a thing, would you say practice was an important part prior to sending people on field, or just learning
Yeah.
by doing on the job?
You've got to practice your pitch. The more you practice the pitch, the more you don't need the pitch. Look, again, I'm going to use an acting analogy. You'd never go on stage to a Shakespeare play without doing weeks or months of rehearsal. Simple. If you practice, practice makes perfect. It's simple. Don't over practice, Michael. There's a level of practice. Again, you can over rehearse, you can overdo it, which then leads to a bad place. It's the right level of practice at the right time. And I do that with SDRs all the time. If I've got an hour in with them to go over a pitching session, if I see half an hour into that session that it's not going anywhere, then we pull away, we'll come back the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's key. I think that's key. And also I think what I always noticed with a lot of managers when they were doing pitching stuff with their teams is they'd always have the same tempo, or they'd always be the same persona.
Mm-hmm.
They'd always be horrible, or they'd always be hard to get through. But that's not the reality of the situation that we live in. So the one thing that I do whenever I do like my SDRs, they've got no idea what they're going to get. Again, this comes from my background. I could be the nicest person they get on a call, or I could be an absolute tool. that just wants to get them off, that won't take a sales call, but they never know from one pitch to the next what I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reason I do that is because that's the only way I think you can recreate the feeling of phoning someone before you've actually spoke to them. It's the closest way that you can do it. It's the closest way you can do it without the introduction of AI. Because that's what I used to do. Never be the same. Always keep them on their toes. Never know whether you're going to be good, bad, or indifferent. Just always keep them on their toes.
I love this because you never actually know in real life too. You pick
Yeah.
up the phone. You can be consistent with what you do, but you have zero control over your prospects. Maybe they just have a bad day. Maybe that's their
Yeah.
personality. To your point, so
Yeah.
you just be consistent, and those
Yeah.
practices basically help your reps see the reality, because
Yeah.
you can do your thing perfectly. You still can get rejected.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it could happen.
But again, what you tend to find is if you're doing things right and you're getting rejected, again, you go technical. Well, who are you speaking to? Why are you speaking to them? Are we speaking to the right account? Is there actually a need to speak to the account? We talked about persona-based outreach. There's no point in saying to a certain persona something that matters to another persona because they're not going to care. So you're not going to get anything for it. So if you find someone's that good but not getting much in return, there's normally a reason, and it's normally fairly easy to dig down and find out why.
Let me ask you this hypothetical situation or real situation. I mean, it's happening to the best of us. It's a end of quarter, numbers are down, you know, the whole team is worried about what's happening. How do you coach your coach or your managers to basically help the team to get themselves together and continue regardless of what's happening?
Go back to basics. First of all, go back to basics. Look at your key pillars. Understand what you want from your SDR team. Understand what you need them to be doing. Go back to basics. That's the first thing you do all the time in anything. Because a lot of the time when you do this job, you can get caught up and wrapped up in your own self. Positively, you think you're better than you are when you're banging in meetings just because you've had a lucky day. Negatively, you think the world's over just because you've had a bad day. So go back to basics. Look at the things that you know drive good activity, the amount of prospects that you're going after, whether you're flooding the market enough, the conversations you're having with the right people, and those key sort of pillars off the top of my head. There's a few others, but normally there's not that much more than that. So go back to basics, really work with the SDR. Don't leave them out to dry. Actually work with them. And I've actually got a case with this. Now, I won't mention the SDR's name, but she's really struggling, really struggling for multiple quarters. And, it was going in a direction that I certainly didn't want it to see. In fact, the management team here at 8x8 really have sort of worked with her to really help and push, see where we could find them positive little plus points to really get them percentage wins and slowly build it up with her. And now, last quarter, she was SDR of the year, SDR of the quarter in the UK. And already this quarter, she's close to a number in a month. That's the best thing you can see as a manager. There's nothing better than that. That just seeing someone with ability where it isn't quite happening, and then slowly over time getting them to where they need to be. That's been a long process. It hasn't happened overnight. But yeah, I think we've been lucky in the UK, especially 8x8. We've been able to turn around SDRs that are underperforming.
This is a fascinating story because there's a lot of wisdom to it. Like, we are sometimes tend to be impatient. Hey, we have numbers. So again, VP will come. He needs to answer to the CRO or to the CEO. CEO needs to answer to the board, and all the shows that come with it, right? But as a leader, to genuinely show them, to your point, I'm here to support you. Okay, you missed quota for 2-3 quarters. It happened. Like, we cannot do anything, about the past. But let me work with you to make sure that you actually, change the script completely and be someone who you could be. And I wanted to see if there are things that you can share. And you said go back to basics. I want to learn this basics. Just teach me.
Are they talking to the right people? Are they affecting the market enough? Are they saying the right things to the right people? That's first of all. Then you look at what they're doing on the phones. Are they strong enough? Are they objection handling in the right way? Are they afraid to objection handle? All of those little things. Then understand what their knowledge is. Sometimes people don't have the knowledge and they're frightened to ask because we're human. We don't
That's
like
true.
people to know that we're fallible at times. And so they won't ask you. So you need to know if they're that kind of person, then you need to ask them and you need to push it in front of them. But for me, that's very simply the basics. It's about having the right conversations with the right people at the right time. Yes, we've got multiple tools that enable us to be able to do that, whether it's an intent tool, whatever it may be. It's really about having the right conversation with the right persona at the right time and leading them down the path, not
Hmm.
selling to them. I think that's where a lot of SDRs go wrong. They try and sell too quickly. It's not your job to sell. You're an SDR. Your job is to open the door into a company for your sales team and, in effect, talk about the art of the possible or
Hmm.
reflect on the good things that the company has done elsewhere and see if there's a relevant conversation to be had. That's the thing that I learned as an SDR. It's not
No,
your
but
job.
hmm.
Hopefully it will be one day, Michael, and you can learn. But ultimately, as an SDR, what your job is to do is to educate people and let them know that there is something in the market that can help them, help their company, help their customers. And that's really key because really, ultimately, we all care about our customers.
So what I'm learning here is, first and foremost, go back to the basics, and that basics means you have tons of tools for intent. You have call recording tools. So you as a manager, your job is to figure out what's actually not working. So I
Mm,
just want to go back to what you said. Work with them and then show them, so they figure out there is a problem here. Now the rep is willing to learn and do their job. Should managers do call shadowing? Should managers do practice sessions? Should them actually
mm.
pick up the phone and show them how to do this? Which method do you find more helpful?
It's always quite interesting when I pitch back to my team because I will ever only do it in a what I call a spitball scenario. Okay, let me show you what I would do, and I just do it. And the
Hmm.
reaction, to me, it sounds awful because I've not rehearsed it and it just doesn't sound awful. But what I always get back from the people I manage is how human it is.
Hmm.
So I think it's good to show them that you can do the job or you can do a part of the job. I certainly think they should understand why you were good at the job. Yeah, I think it's key. I don't get on the phone. I wouldn't get on the phone necessarily and do their job for them because obviously if you're prospecting into an enterprise company, Michael, you may have already sent loads of emails and you're already down the road. I like to show them what I think good looks like and see if they can take that on and then coach them in the background on the call. So, as an example, recently I was talking to someone about gatekeepers. And I used to have a really simple trick with gatekeepers that worked for me all the time. First of all, I put on a really posh accent. Now, I know not
Yeah.
everyone can do that, Michael, but there is a method to my madness. I'd be like, is Michael there, please? Thank you. I'd never say please, because if you say please, what you're psychologically telling someone is you don't know them and that you need their help. But I'd always say thank you. Because if you say thank you, you're not being rude, but what it actually means is you know the person you want to get through to. And think about it yourself. If I just called you up and went, can I speak to Michael? Thank you. You're going to think. So that's the tricks that I would use to get around. I had very good ratio getting through people like that. Now, I know not everyone can just change their accent to suit whatever they're doing, but the actual point of all of this is the please to thank you, the usage of certain words when you pitch that have a certain reaction to the other person on the phone or in front of you if you're a salesperson. That's the kind of stuff I really love. I
Mm.
love the way that people can use words to get a reaction. So you've got to work with them and say, well, we'll try it, do it.
I love it. It comes with experience. Like, you've been an actor, and I think the delivery is more important just to say thank you, because you can call to your point and be very confident about it. I know that person, and you have it in mind. I know that person. Hey, give me Andy, thanks. Or you
Yeah,
could be, hey, give me Andy, thank you. It's
yeah,
just the way
straight
you
away.
deliver.
Yeah,
People
if
can
someone
read it.
done that to me, they've gone straight away because I know what the point of the call is. Unless unless I know that I need the call, which no one does prior to the call. No one wants a cold call. No one's sitting there in the office thinking, I can't wait for my 5 cold calls today to sell me something I've already got. No one wants that. So, you've got to understand that what you need to do very quickly is you have to make someone trust you and build a rapport with someone in a very little time. So you have to know how to verbalize. You have to know people. You have to. You just have to. And you
Right, I
have to
love it.
enjoy people as well, Michael, I think a little bit. You
That
have
is
to
true.
enjoy that there's differences and that, certain people react in a certain way because maybe they're culturally different. Brilliant. I love all of that stuff as well. I think that's really good to understand.
Okay. So right now we're talking about knowing people. And when you call people, you need to really connect with them. Yes, there are certain, techniques you can use to make your life easier. To your point, instead of saying please, say thank you and practice the way you actually deliver it so you can
Mm.
get a better result. But I wanted to ask something about AI. Like right now, it's a big thing. Everybody's talking about
Yes.
it. Like AI SDRs will replace all of us. The
Yeah.
world is changing, which
Yeah.
again, some part true and some part not. I wanted to get your perspective and how you see your team is actually reacting to this. Are they, worried about this, and how do you help
No,
them?
actually, really positively. Look, I think you've got to understand there's a generational thing here, Michael. I think if you actually break it down and look at the people that are afraid of AI, they're probably my age or around my age. They probably just watch Terminator a little bit too much and think that that's what's going to happen. And look, I've just joked, but I understand the reticence. We see this all the time at 8x8 because obviously we've got an AI chatbot self-service that we do. And I remember when that first came in, I was like, chatbot. Because I've had so many bad experiences with a chatbot that isn't AI driven that has me going around in a circle for an hour. And all I'm saying is, can I just
Frustrating.
speak to someone? Please. But then when I started to obviously working with these new variations of chat, but once I started to see what they can do now, it absolutely blew me away. But I needed to see it, Michael, because my brain, no matter how much everyone was telling me it was different, was like, yeah, all right, okay. So I think that's a part of it. I think it's a generational thing. I think younger people are they're much more on board with what AI and the benefits can bring to it. And obviously in an SDR role, you tend to deal with people sort of between 20 to 30, 10 to. I know that I am generalizing there, but you tend to deal with people that they've not been hurt by films on what AI could be or having a bad experience with something. So yeah, I've not really seen any pushback in my team. And also, Michael, it's about the way you frame anything. You've got to understand as a manager, your job is to sell stuff to your team. You may not be selling front faced and you may not be in front of customers, but you have to sell to your team. Because if you can't put a tool in front of them that does something like this or an intent or whatever it may be, if you don't believe in it and you can't make them believe in it, then they're never really going to believe in it, are they?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of managers forget that. I think a lot of managers are like, no, I've bought this tool in, you just need to use it. No, mate, you need to sell it to them. Maybe sell is not the right word. You have to convince people that they should buy into something. Maybe that's closer to the truth.
Let me ask you my last question,
Of course.
and it's about actually AI bots doing SDR work. It's too early to even make that decision. Like, hey, should we get rid of our team or should we, have AI helping their team? Like, these are the things that everybody's testing and it's still in the trial phase. But what are your thoughts? Like in 2-3 years, what kind of changes you're expecting to see in SDR orgs?
I had this conversation with someone the other day, actually, funny enough. I don't think it will affect SDRs. Not in the way that you mentioned there in the front line. At the moment, there is still you need to be able to pivot on a call, and I'm not sure AI is at that point right now. And there's a human connection that you will need. And so I think SDRs are fine. I think it's going to be interesting to see the SDR manager job change in the next 10 years. That's where
Tell
I
me about
think it
that.
is. I think
Tell me about
everyone's looking at that SDR level. No. I think it's going to change the way that managers operate.
that.
I
Interesting.
think,
What do you think? Tell me. Tell me what do you think is going to happen?
well, I think I said to someone the other day, the skill set of a manager may change. So without AI, you need a certain skill set to manage a team. With
Hmm.
AI, and in 10 years with I mean, it's going to grow. If you think it's a big thing now, 10 years, unless regulations get put in, which may or may not happen, but I don't think they will. I don't think that will be a global thing. I think that will be more of a country specific thing. Ultimately, this is what I think. But ultimately, I think what's going to happen is you're going to need to change the skill set of the people that manage. So almost the skill set is going to need to know how to manage the tools and not manage the people. That's where I think the change is going to be.
This is an interesting perspective. So do you think managers would turn to mini RevOps, maybe just working with tools?
I think they'll need to have more of an understanding of that. So as an example, I would probably, if this was 10 years, if I was getting into doing what I'm doing now, I think my skill set maybe would have been, it wouldn't have been as apparent as quickly. I wouldn't have been able to make that journey as quickly as I have done. I think that's what's going to happen. So yeah, I think you'll still need to be able to manage people, but I think the skill set of managers will change. That's what I think. I think that will happen before it hits SDR level.
Interesting.
Just my opinion.
Let's see what happens. Like that's actually a very
think about it,
different
Michael.
Perspective. Yeah.
If we think about an AI coaching tool, yeah. All right. What I've needed prior to having that tool in play was a manager that could do it, show them how to do it. Now what I need with a tool like that is a manager that can understand what the tool's telling them and then reflect that information back to them. Different skill set. And I know that this is just a basic level, but I think what it's going to give to managers and directors is much more ownership on where, how you can run pitching sessions with your team. As you said, the rehearsal side of it, making sure that they're able to rehearse what they're doing all the time and constantly have something to their side so that maybe when they've had that bad call, they can just go into the AI coaching and get they can sort it out for themselves. But that's where I think it's going to hit at management level before I think it hits on the SDR level.
So is it fair to say everybody's safe?
I'm down the job center, mate, I suppose is what I'm saying there, isn't it?
Andy, thank you very much. It was great chatting with you today. If someone wants to reach out to you to have a conversation, guys, don't pitch, okay? Don't make me look bad. But if someone wants to reach out for a conversation or advice, can they and how?
Yeah, of course. So I'm on LinkedIn, and you can contact me via email. And obviously that's Andy.Gillies at 8x8.com. I'm always open to a conversation because you should never stop learning.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Take care, everyone.